Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, college football fans across the nation and around the world. This is Tim May with the Tim May Show, and got an interesting little show on today because we all know Ryan Day just won his first national championship at the Ohio State University. The two guys who preceded him in that regard, Jim Tressel, now Lieutenant Governor of Ohio, Jim Tressel, and Urban Meyer. I've got them on as my guests this week in succeeding order uh, to basically put you in the shoes and maybe the seat that Ryan Day is sitting on now, having won a national championship. Now, what do you do? Well, first thing you do is you get a contract extension in order, which it looks like he's done with Ross Bjork and athletic director of Ohio State and the Ohio State University. He wants to be around Ohio State, it looks like, for a long time. Of course, the final pieces have to be put together in that, but he's going to be around into the 30s, not his 30s, deep into his 40s, it looks like, from an age standpoint. He's trying to put together, hang on to what he's got of a staff, maybe move the pieces on the chessboard a little bit on his staff in terms of a new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator, new offensive line coach. And we'll see where he finally ends up with that. He has some pieces already in place, like Brian Hartline being up to uh, the offensive coordinator of Ohio State. Maybe Keenan Bailey moving into an associate offensive coordinator role, and making some outside hires. So it'll be interesting to see where it finally ends up as we as we record this. There have been a few things that have not been finalized in terms of his staff, including the new defensive coordinator, if in fact there will be one. It looks like there will be, but be hired from outside, but we'll see where that goes. But in the meantime, this podcast is more about Ryan Day, a head coach, and what do you do when you finally grab that brass ring, because grabbing is one thing, hanging on to it is something totally different. And my two guests on this podcast, Jim Tressel and Urban Meyer, are here to attest to that. I mean, obviously, Jim Tressel won four national championships at Division One AA Youngstown State before coming back to Ohio State, where he had been an assistant coach under Earl Bruce and going on to win the national championship in 2002. And then, of course, Urban Meyer, who won two national championships at Florida, including, I know most Ohio State fans remember the first one when he upset an Ohio State team in 2006 for the BCS championship, came back 2 years later and won it again at Florida, then took a sabbatical in 2011 before coming back and becoming the Ohio State head coach in 2012, and just in 3 seasons, winning his third national championship in 2014, and all the trials and travails that team went through just to get that done. So those are experts if there ever were experts. All three of these guys are different dudes, though, as you well know. I mean, different personalities, different ways of doing things, different ways of structuring staffs, right on down the line. But these guys, more than anything else, Jim Tressel and Urban Meyer, have the knowledge of what that entails, the anguish sometimes that entails of replacing key personnel. So we'll get to them. And by the way, this conversation, the conversation I had with Jim Tressel, happened before he was named the new lieutenant governor of the state of Ohio, the guy that we used to, maybe even to his face a few times. I'm sure I did a couple of times, but definitely behind his back, we referred to as Senator Jim Tressel when he was the head coach at Ohio State, just based on the way he conducted his press conferences and the way he answered questions. You always knew he had public office in him sometime or another. And I don't mean being the highest paid public servant in the state of Ohio, which he was when he was the head coach at Ohio State. And by the way, that continues in the $12.5 million realm with Ryan Day now and his new contract, pending new contract. But just in the way Jim Tressel conducted things, thoughtful answers, sometimes filibuster kind of answers, but nonetheless, you could tell there was a lot of thinking going on, and I think he's going to be great in his new role as a lieutenant governor, because some people are just born for roles like that of leadership. He's definitely one of those guys. And by the way, speaking of that, this time a year ago, I was contemplating big time just kind of moving basically into full retirement. But then I saw the team that Ryan Day and his staff, led by Mark Pantoni, put together for 2024. Why not give it one more shot before stepping off? Stepping off into full retirement. So I came back with Letterman Row and enjoyed it. Have enjoyed my association with Letterman Row, which dragged me out of retirement the first time back in the winter, or actually back in the summer of 2019, after I had stepped away from the Columbus Dispatch after 42 years. But I totally enjoyed my time with Letterman Row, the last several with Spencer Holbrook. But we've parted ways, Letterman Row and I totally, like I said, I appreciate the opportunity they gave me to continue in some capacity the last 6 years. Totally enjoyed it, um, and uh, and so now, from a everyday standpoint, it almost gets me emotional because I've been doing this for a long time. I've been a sports writer since I was 19 years old. I'm 70 now, going to be 71 in a month. And so basically, for 52 years or so, I've been a sports writer and pretty much in one form or another doing something almost every day in that realm. I'm going to step back, definitely a step back from just writing stories and being a full-time reporter, if that's what you want to call it. But occasionally, I'm going to dabble my toe in the podcast realm, in the Tim May Show realm, uh, from time to time, and it may venture off into other areas because of that. But I did want to throw a few more in there from the Ohio State end of things, including this conversation with Jim Tressel and Urban Meyer. And I've got a conversation I've already recorded with Ross Bjork, the athletic director of Ohio State. Man, what a whirlwind year he's had. He was going to take a little bit of a sabbatical after accepting the job as athletic director of Ohio State, but Gene Smith made his job. Gene Smith, the outgoing athletic director, basically had Ross reporting for duty this time a year ago when they opted to get to change head basketball coaches. I've got a conversation with him coming up maybe later this week. You'll be able to find here on my YouTube channel and perhaps other places. And then I'm going to have another conversation with two guys that I found along the way here covering Ohio State who really intrigued me for a lot of reasons. Luke Fedlam, attorneys Luke Fedlam and Larry James, who now have formed their own team. And we're going to talk about, it is Black History Month. They're both African Americans. That's not what the conversation is going to mainly dwell on, but it's going to dwell on it a little bit. But on down the road, I'll have that conversation later this month with those two guys, two of the more uh, interesting people I've met along the way of covering Ohio State football. But without further ado, let's get to my conversation with Jim Tressel and then Urban Meyer. Oh, I follow through with my promises, ladies and gentlemen. Jim Tressel, 2002 Ohio State National Championship coach. He won four of those at Youngstown State in Division. What was it then back then,
One
Coach
double
Tressel?
A. It
Yeah,
was
one double
Now it's
A,
FCS.
and
Yep.
played for what? Three more, two or three more.
Well, we lost twice at Youngstown and we lost twice at Ohio State. So
State.
we played in nine of them.
Gosh, that's amazing. But here's the reason I want you on this show is you've been where Ryan Day is right now, in some form or fashion. There was that first time you ever won one at Youngstown State. And I don't know if you remember me asking you this question at Ohio State, but I remember it like it was yesterday when I asked you, have you had time to bask, in the glory of winning a national championship, and you fakely, I hope you're fake, and said you didn't know what the word bask meant. Of course, knowing you, I believe that. But man, just number one, do you remember the impact it had on your life winning that first national championship or on your career more than anything else? But then I want to ask you what would be your advice to Ryan to handle this newfound glory, so to speak?
I've told a lot of coaches my opinion. when they set their goals and they want to be conference champs or national champs or whatever, is, oh, by the way, your world won't change just because you do that.
Yeah.
Because and I always use the story. Uh, I was coming off the field after our first national championship victory at Youngstown State, and they were doing the trophy presentation in the end zone. Not quite the hoopla they have today, right?
Yeah.
And it was just somebody waiting there with the trophy.
Yeah. No
And so
confetti
I'm walking,
cannons. Yeah. Yeah.
no confetti. But we were on CBS, and it was a national TV
Oh, yeah.
game, and on. And so I'm going down, and I get intersected by Jim Gray. And Jim Gray puts the microphone and said, "Coach, do you think you'll repeat?" And I thought, wait a minute, I haven't even got this trophy.
Yeah.
But it was a great reminder. And I've told many coaches, hey, it's fun to reach your goals. The day you reach your goals, coaches immediately start thinking about tomorrow. But probably one of the great lessons I learned after our first one was every year at Youngstown State and Ohio State, we studied a book as a team. And we tried to pick a book that could speak to where we were and where we wanted to go. And, just every team had a different one. And we would get suggestions from coaches and players and so forth is, hey, what do we need to study together? And I remember after we won that first championship at Youngstown State, a kid came into my office. He said, "Coach, I got the perfect book." I said, "Yeah, what's that?" And he said, it's by, I think his name was Robert Kriegel. And the book was entitled, "If It Ain't Broke,
Fix it.
Break It."
Oh, break it. Yeah.
And his whole point in the
That's
book,
right.
and he wrote about businesses all over America that thought, well, they were the leading in sales, whether it's GM or Texas Instruments or, Goodyear, or whoever it was, that the mistake you make is, hey, we're at the top. And if we just keep doing things the way we're doing them, we'll stay at the top.
Yeah.
And his whole book talked about the fact that your thinking has got to be break it thinking. Your thinking has got to be, hey, okay, that was great. Your competitors now have got you circled even more. They're watching everything you do and want to do it better. And don't fall into the trap thinking that if it ain't broke, don't fix it, because that's a cliche that is not, doesn't allow you to have the sustainability that you
Yeah.
would like to have. And
Yeah.
so, ironically, every time we won the national championship, the guys wanted to read that book again.
Wow.
And after we won it at Ohio State, that book was 20 years old by then. We chose to pick that book. And so, like anything else, you've always got to be thinking about how can we do things better. Doing it now, because you're always losing coaches and you're losing players and you're losing, uh, people know more about how you do it. And so they're going to defend you better, or they're going to, attack you better. And so to me, that's part of the fun. And Ryan and his staff, and I think there's some healthy part of staff changes. Everyone's saying, "Oh my gosh, we lost a couple coaches," And I was telling Ryan a couple weeks back, shortly after the game, uh, that I remember in 1990 we were 11-1, and we were just starting to really climb at Youngstown State, and we had a heck of a team coming back, we thought, and so forth. And then we lost Mark D'Antonio, we lost Jim Bowman, and we lost Don Treadwell,
Wow.
all who became very successful coaches. And we only had 6 coaches. We didn't have 26. We had
Right.
6.
Right.
And the newspapers were all saying, "Oh my gosh, the bottom's falling out. Uh, their progress is going to be, stunted for a minute,"
Hey,
and
let me throw
so
this
forth.
in there
And then,
too. Tressel can't hold on to his staff. Yeah. Go ahead now.
oh, of course, yeah,
Yeah.
right, yeah. And the next year, we win the national championship with 3 new coaches out of 6. And we always teased Dino and Bowles and Treddy and them, saying, "Hey, we just had to get rid of you. We figured out the formula. We
Yeah.
just needed you guys out of here."
Exactly.
But, it's, I think change, can be good. It can keep it fresh, especially as hard and long as Ryan and his group targeted this and worked on it. And, oh man, you got to turn that phone off. Sorry. And
Sorry.
You know, it's every new beginning is healthy.
Uh, is this is the thing that I think a lot of people don't get about college football is every year it's a new team and it's a new team and a new year. Sometimes no matter like you just pointed out, even if you don't change very many personnel at all, it's an older team, it's a wiser team, or it's a younger team, and it's a playful team, or it's a serious team and stuff. And uh, to me, I just wanted to ask you this. What stood out to you most about this 2024/2025 team? Obviously, it was like a lot of what I just said. It was older guys who returned. It was a great confluence of older guys who returned, transfer portal guys who were vital, turns out, for the thing, and then a young guy named Jeremiah Smith and some young freshmen who actually helped out and played a lot. But it was almost a perfect storm of of playing personnel. What was just your take on this group of players, just in a nutshell?
Well, we always talked about the fact that we were always going to have coaching changes because we wanted our guys getting head coaching jobs and
Yeah,
or NFL
yeah,
jobs. And we were also we felt back in those days you're going to have about a third of your roster change because you're going to
yes,
have your seniors, you're going to have some walk-ons leave, so forth. Well, now the movement in coaches seems to be more quickly in these, not just at Ohio State but everywhere.
yeah,
Uh, your roster change, I bet you, is closer to 50% than it is 33%. I may be wrong. And so every team had to have its own signature and its own confluence of things. And I think about our O2 team. And, we had old guys that hadn't had the success they were hoping for at Ohio
yep,
State. That was a group. We had some young guys in the middle who were just getting ready to be sophomores who were really going to be good. Nugent, Chris Gamble, Simon Frazier, Dustin Fox, guys like that.
yeah,
And then we had this 25-person recruiting class, which may have been one of the best recruiting classes we had in our time there, that ended up with a handful of first round picks and dozens and dozens of NFL picks. And so you had that confluence of competitive young guys, some first round draft choices redshirted,
yeah,
but they ended up, and then that middle group that were new and they were kind of our guys, we brought them. And then the old guys who we had now gotten to know,
yes,
we had now been with them for a year and they were hungry. And so if you think about our 24-25 team, it's a little bit of the same. There were some old guys who hadn't accomplished what they wanted yet. There were freshmen who wanted to be a part of the great Ohio State tradition. And then there were those portal guys who had been somewhere else. And for whatever reason, whether it's Will Howard or Judkins or
Seth
Caleb,
McLaughlin, yeah,
McLaughlin, who had been a part of good things, but wanted to be a part of something that was even better and brought that maturity.
yeah,
And to me, that's the difference in college football now. There's really, for the Ohio States and the Texases and the Alabamas of the world, there there isn't a uh, redeveloping time because you're never going to have a young team at those great places.
yeah,
If we're a little shy on something at Ohio State now, we can go get a junior who's, you know, who's already good at it and who's hungry to be at an even better place. So, yeah, I think this team this year was that coming together. Now it's up to the staff and especially the older guys to make sure everyone meshes together and isn't coming from all the different angles with an agenda of their own. And I thought Ryan and his staff did a great job of just embracing where everyone was coming from.
yeah. I agree 100%. I wanted to ask you this though. It's like you just said, going into the post 2002 national championship press conference the next morning at the hotel there, my sports editor at the time said, "Hey, you know what you need to do? You need to ask Coach Tressel like you just said a while ago, Jim Gray walks up to you and his first question is, can you repeat? And and he wanted me to ask you that. And you said, boy, we just won this one. I want to take a little time, you know what I mean, to let it
Mhm.
absorb. Although obviously you're a planner, you know, you you were planning on the next year even before y'all even played that game, you know what I mean, type thing. But that
Yep.
wasn't the point. The point is, do you owe it to yourself as a head coach? Because I'm I don't know how to put this except you are in charge. This is your baby. This is your family that you've gotten through adoption agencies and you put it together. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Coaches, players, support staff, whatever. Do you owe it to yourself to sit back for at least a couple of days and go, wow, we really did that? I mean, you know what I mean? Can you do that?
Not really. My comment on that one was always, there'll be a day I'm in a rocking chair that
Yeah,
maybe I can reflect,
yeah,
but your mind won't allow you to do that. The minute the game ended, you say, "Oh, we're going to enjoy this for 24 hours." Well, that's a lie.
yeah,
You're going to wake up in the morning thinking about
yeah,
all the things that, are part of things. And also, you're in the middle of recruiting. Now, the recruiting world's different now with the portal and all that. And I was talking to the University of Washington head coach Jed Fish the other day, and he said they signed 0 people on signing day,
yeah,
but signed 44 people total.
yeah,
And so
yeah,
it's a different world. But uh, I think this is I reflect on our situation at Ohio State. We did a great job handling adversity, because we had a tough moment out at Oregon, uh, had a tough moment in the horseshoe in November,
yep,
but we handled it and we stayed together. Adversity isn't easy to handle, but it's way easier to handle than success.
yeah, yeah,
And now the challenge is handling success. And that happens in the course of the game. You get behind a little bit, you got to handle adversity. You get up a little bit, you got to handle success.
yeah,
You get that. Well, it's that way in seasons too.
yeah.
And so the fun of it will be is how will emotionally, strategically, tactically, um, the staff gets together, and you can't fall. That's why hence the book. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's no. It's if it ain't broke, break it. Because
Yeah.
don't let them pat you on the back. And we used to have a phrase at YSU, and we carried it on at Ohio State. Hey, don't get caught staring at your ring. Because if
Yeah.
you're sitting there staring at your ring, someone else is working.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but that's the fun of it, and those guys will do a good job. And we're going to attract great staff members to fill those positions who might bring something we didn't have. We're gonna attract great players who want to be a part of it. And I've often said one of our greatest advantages at Ohio State is we are a big state. We're in the top 10, I think, states in population. We have probably one of the top 2 or 3 or 4 states in football, high
Yeah.
school.
Yeah.
I mean, we're really good.
Yeah.
And there's only one of us.
Yeah.
And so now add the thing NIL. Well, there's only one of us. In Alabama, the Auburn folks and the Alabama folks, they're half, maybe not half and half, but they're both fighting for it.
Yeah.
So we have some good advantages, but it will still come down to how do we mentally, emotionally, handle that success we had and stay grounded. And that's what you have to admire about the Chiefs. I mean,
Yeah.
they've all the adulation and all the so forth, and they've just kind of stayed focused on the task at hand. And again, that's the fun of coaching is, hey, let's see if we can do that.
Yeah. And also get yourself a good quarterback.
Well,
uh,
there's
hey,
no doubt about that.
you,
But you got to figure out what your quarterback can do
yes.
because
Yeah.
you know as we mentioned, we played in 9 national championship games with 8 different quarterbacks.
That's crazy.
Patriots played in, you know, 7 with one guy.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
Chiefs have played in what 4 with one guy,
One guy.
and and that's not college football.
No.
College football is get your quarterback, figure out what he can do, um, build around him, and see if you can make a run at it.
Hey, Coach Tressel, November 30th, Ohio State gets beat fourth year in a row by Michigan. The gloom and despair is on everyone's face. Uh, the fans, some of the jackasses, as I like to call them, go overboard with
Yeah.
what they would like to see done with Ryan Day, et cetera. Crazy stuff. I have said this on my podcast and on radio and TV from December the 1st, and this is no slant on you or Urban Meyer or Woody or anybody else, but from December the 1st through January 20th, the evening of January 20th, I've never seen a better coaching job by a head coach at Ohio State. I'm talking about under the circumstances. You know what
Yep.
I'm talking about.
Yep.
You've been around. You've been around a bunch of games this year. It's there. You were there on when they won the national championship. Um, what is your take on what Ryan Day, how he handled that in a nutshell? You know what I mean? What is your, because I mean, family is taking it, you know what I mean? Everything's coming at him from every angle, and then all of a sudden, at the end of the year, uh, teams come after your coordinators and your offensive line coach because now they think you invented football there and they want some of it. You know what I
Sure.
mean?
Sure.
I mean, how quickly it changes. But what is your take on the job that he did? Because you've been in those shoes of having to bring a team up after I don't know, whatever you want to call it, catastrophe is what a lot of fans call it. I mean, but a major disappointment. But what is your take on how he handled that? And did you see him even? Have you noticed him change a little even from those experiences? Because every experience changes you in some way.
Oh, no question. The more opportunity you get to do a job or a task, that's why experience is so important. They're talking in the NFL now for quarterbacks. They want to draft these guys that have played 55 games in college because they
Yeah,
know those experiences. And
yeah,
so, that season was a great experience. Uh, you know, the adversity came. The thing that was apparent to me was that they trusted Coach Day. They
yeah,
trusted the staff. The staff clearly knew what the team wanted to be. The team certainly had the talent to be that, and
yes,
you always say timing and circumstances help and so forth. We were fortunate that Miami, Florida was coming off of 34 straight wins. The last year's national championship, they had won 59-7 or something, and so
yeah,
forth. And we could just quietly, with all the criticism about, we're not any good or whatever, just keep working. And I think amidst all the criticism, uh, and uh, I think Ryan has grown to understand that it's impossible to win enough. There are going to be X percent of the people who are jackasses or whatever, just like there's X percent that when you win some games act like you walk on water. Well,
yeah,
that's not true. And
yeah,
it's not true that you're a bum.
yeah,
And, you know, you just have to, realize that. And then I think the circumstances really worked out well for us. We didn't have to play the next week. Now we could grow together. We got to play at home. After we stung them about 3 times, all of a sudden the running back's not in the game, the receiver's not in the game, the
yeah.
linemen are out, so we pounded them, and so forth. And so, I think they did a masterful job of just staying the course. I do think they relaxed a little bit. Um, I think the expectations going into the season, and all those things, and the urgency of, okay, we're finally gonna get this Michigan monkey off our back, and
Yeah.
I think there was a tension there, and then after that tension kind of exploded, and the trust was obvious. Um, People care for one another. I think he had a group of really good kids, who cared about one another and cared about the university and knew that they could be good if they would just allow themselves to be good.
Yeah.
Uh, I think the coaches looked in the mirror, which it starts with the coaches. Hey, are we doing the exact things we should be doing? And so all those things come into play, And when I saw the brackets come out, I thought, I think this is a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's and the other thing Ryan and I talked about all year long was, hey, this is different now. If we're fortunate enough to get in the playoffs, this is a long grind. The people who can stay the healthiest, mentally and physically,
Yeah.
is going to be key. And I thought they did a masterful job of the right doses of everything. And you know, one thing that was the right dose of was humility. I mean, we got humbled there, and that's good for all us humans if you use it correctly. And they did a wonderful job of saying, "Hey, we're going to move on, and we're going to be good."
Yeah. I mean, that team could have gone either way. They had a big team meeting with Ryan,
Right.
and they had a
That's
big
right.
team meeting amongst themselves. And I've told it, I've said this many times. I wouldn't call myself a super religious person, but from a spiritual standpoint, I do believe in things. And I thought the spiritual element of this team shone through at exactly the right moment
Right.
when they could have left that meeting just going like a hand grenade.
Right.
Instead, they left like plutonium. I mean, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? They were
No.
together. Uh,
Well, and
that,
that's the power of a spiritual base.
yeah,
If you have a spiritual base, you can handle anything that comes along. It might seem like the world's going to end, but if you have that spiritual base, and that was the beauty of that team, which that was clearly a strength that was especially from the leadership of the team,
yes,
uh, and that's what's wonderful about whatever your spiritual beliefs are, is when they're most needed, they're always there.
yeah. Something to lean on, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, my
Yep.
last question to you: Can can let's say, how do I phrase this? Four straight losses to Michigan. Put that in a nutshell for me. That for sure. I mean, I don't know if you're aware, but Ryan Day has agreed to in principle, to a new contract that will take him through 7 years now, extends through 7 years for $12.5 million annually. That's pretty good, isn't
Not
it?
bad. Not bad.
The Michigan game, like you just pointed out a minute ago without saying it, there is life after the Michigan game now, or the game, as you people call it, after the game, no matter how it goes, as was found out this year, there is life after that game. Ohio State won four straight games and won a national championship, unprecedented, first time ever, 12-team playoff and stuff. Are we at an inflection point in major college football now where maybe the rivalries that everything was built on, that why people care as much as they do, are they going to fade a little, in your opinion? That's a loaded question for you, but there's no other way to ask
Well,
it.
the rivalry
I mean,
games back,
Alabama lost to Auburn and still won a national championship a few years ago. Go ahead.
right? The rivalry games back when that ended the season, and
Yeah.
only two or three people, four people, six people went to bowl games.
Yeah.
Okay,
Exactly.
was you couldn't do anything if you didn't win the rival game.
Right.
Now, it's just been proven you can.
Yeah.
But percentages will tell you, we'll look back in 10 years and say, you know what? If you lose that rivalry game 7 times,
Yeah.
it's probably going to affect the overall outcome. So don't just think that, oh, the rivalry game doesn't matter, because
Exactly.
the rivalry game became the rivalry game in our case because typically it was who went to the Rose Bowl or who was the Big Ten champs.
Right.
Okay. And you're going to need to be kind of like that to be in the playoffs.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So, and the other thing is this, it's still the rivalry game. And I know I was just with my offensive center from Berea High School. He stopped over the house, and first thing he brought up was we won our rivalry game. Well, we didn't win the conference. When I was playing, they didn't have state playoffs,
Right.
but you know, but still, the only thing he cared about, 55 years later, was we won the rivalry game. So I don't think the rivalry game will be diminished over the long haul. I don't think it will be irrelevant for the short haul. because a lot of times that rivalry game will determine who goes into the playoffs
Yes,
or who does
exactly.
this or that. So, and it's still the rivalry game. So, I don't think anyone, and you can be sure that our guys are thinking about the rivalry game for next year. Going up there hard. Who knows what the situation is? Who knows what the playoff implications are? Who knows anything?
Yeah.
And it's still that game. So, yeah, maybe people might try to talk you into thinking it's diminished, but I'm not sure history is going to tell you that it's diminished.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, if you ask Ryan Day right now if it's diminished, he will tell you absolutely not. I mean,
No. Yep.
he understands. I mean,
Yep.
wow. I mean, he went through the fire and came out the other side. That's what you can say about this team. I mean,
Yep.
wow.
Yep.
And anyway, hey, Jim Tressel, thank you very much for joining the Tim
All
May
right.
show again, my man.
The Tim May show. I've made it. How many times have I been on the Tim May show though? It's
Several
22.
times. I was going
Yeah.
to count them up in my head, but I'm 70 now and I can't count like I used to.
Right.
But quite a few times. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, Jim Tressel is one of the great podcasts out there now. Speaking of imitating him imitating me, but you got to
That's
pick.
right.
I know everybody's discovered it, but you got to discover this. The Jim Tressel podcast because he goes into all kinds of things and really kind of circles back to how you build a successful program in some form or fashion, whether it be a football team, a softball team, a software team, whatever it is, right? And I know you're having fun doing that, aren't you, Coach Tressel?
Oh man, I tell you what, it's so much fun because you love learning. The minute you stop
Yeah,
learning, you stop. And just listening to all the guests we've had and from different walks of life and realizing we're so much the same versus being different, even though we do different things. And and I'm convinced that's why we called it that. It's all about the team. It's
yeah,
uh, that's what life's about, and starts with your team at home and goes to your team, in your country and in your world.
yeah. Do you get a compliment when Carlos Lachlan, who Ryan hired in like last March or early April to be the running backs coach, guy from Oregon, but originally from Montgomery, Alabama, has been around, has been through all kinds of just worked his rear end off to get where he is. But one of the things he pointed out when we were first talking to him was reading your winner's manual. What does that? I know you don't bask. We already figured that out, but that's got to make you feel good.
It really does. And what all of us hope to do is anything we do can add value to someone else.
Yeah.
And when Carlos told me that, or I was just at an event prevent Ohio blindness this past week, and this lady came up to me and said, "Hey, I was really in a dark time in my life, and this and that, and I read your book, and I want you to know it made the difference." And hey,
Wow.
isn't that why we exist? Is to see how we can help others.
Yeah, it is crazy how much it's not so much how football means, it's how much the process of building a winning team and influencing other people means. And that's the great venue and the great pipeline for that is sports and definitely college football has meant so much. That's what Ryan Day said, man. He gets to influence thousands of people
Right.
at the college level. And I remember your wife telling me that about you. You you were in that to win football games, but mainly you were in that to impact people. I mean, in a positive way, and not just football players. And you got to do that as a head coach, and then as a president of a university. But then, like right now, you're doing the same thing. I mean, that's uh, where does that yearning come from?
I think like most of us, whatever we saw when we were young, made us think, maybe I can try, and
Yeah,
I saw my dad and I saw my mom, and they woke up every day. They wanted to help people,
yeah,
and you talk about Ryan's contract. My dad's last year, which was
yeah,
1981, he was the head coach, the athletic director, the chair of the health and phys ed department, taught a full load, and was an assistant coach in the sport at Baldwin Wallace,
yeah.
and made $1,000.
Wow.
But he wasn't in it, you know,
Yeah,
for anything other than how he was going to impact others. And
yeah.
so I got to watch that. And shame on me if I don't try to do the same.
Carry on. Pay forward, pay while you're there, and pay afterwards. That's your motto.
Yes,
Anyway,
sir.
ladies and gentlemen, the
The late.
great Yeah.
Whoa, just because I'm 72 and
Hey,
I'm older
that
than
was
you?
that was like the if it's not broke, don't fix it. You know, remember
Right.
I
Yeah.
said that? That was like was already had a saying in my head. But the great Jim Tressel, thanks for joining the Tim May Show again, my man.
All right. My honor. Talk to you later.
Cut. I can't believe I did that, but I did do it.
Well, you can just save it for the day I go down and then you can
Yeah,
just bring it out.
yeah. Just bring it back. I insert that back in there.
That's right.
Coach Tressel, I appreciate you, man. I know I went
Okay.
long, but I
That's
appreciate you.
right. It's all good. All
Thank
right,
you, man.
man. I'll
Bye bye.
talk to you.
All
Yes,
right.
sir.
Oh, and as promised, ladies and gentlemen, here's Urban Meyer, who won 3 national championships, not with Florida, one at Ohio State. And Urban is pretty well, it's almost a legend how you felt after you won that first one when you guys beat Ohio State at Florida. You beat Ohio State out in Phoenix. And like you said, it's almost like, if I remember correctly, you felt the pressure of, hey, I got to do this again almost, or you were thinking along those lines. But what was that like, and what would you counsel Ryan Day on right now about dealing with the after effects of a national championship?
We've already spoke a couple of times, and I was kind of an extremist. So, but a lot of guys I talked to went through it. Mac Brown went through it. Actually, Coach K and I had a long conversation one time and Bob Stoops, and you just become, or at least I did, that was the only standard that was acceptable.
Yeah,
Once you do it, I remember it's well known that I had my father and the legendary Coach Earl Bruce, my mentor, come in the locker room back in my locker area, and I remember sitting down and going, "Holy cow, man! This is now I get to do this for fun because we did it." And but once again, I was different, man. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat, I couldn't if it wasn't national title performance. And I'm not even talking about winning, losing. There was times we'd win a game, and I'd be so pissed that wasn't our best,
yeah,
and I knew in my heart that was not a national championship performance. And some of the coaches will tell you stories, and they're all true. That it was hell's fire for a while, man. So I think Ryan's a little more even keeled. He's a little older. I was young. I guess he's not much older, but
no,
the reality is that it's on you now, and it's a great thing.
yeah. Uh, in a weird way, do you feel some uh, I don't know, reward from this also? Because, it was basically carrying on, the foundation the foundation was there, but the building you built when you showed up at Ohio State, almost immediately and stuff. Do you feel like that? Do you feel in some sense that's carried on through these Ryan Day teams in some form or fashion? Obviously, he succeeded you. It was almost like a coach in waiting to a certain extent way back when you guys had to transition after the 2018 season. But do you feel some pride that you at least had a little bit of a part of this, for want of another term?
I think Ohio State's very unique. Everyone, I didn't realize that until this year, that every coach post Woody Hayes is in the College Football Hall of Fame, including Woody.
Yes, I'm
So
going to get
I,
to
I
that.
don't, I think, you know, every school has gone that had the highs and lows and the valleys, and Ohio State really hasn't.
Yeah,
We had that 6 and 7 year, and Coach Fickle was the interim, but they had suspend. It was, you look back at that now, that nonsense,
yeah,
it still drives me nuts that happened.
yeah,
But never mind.
yeah,
And Ohio State I think the infrastructure is so strong. One of the things I'm most proud of is I think it's the greatest infrastructure in college football, maybe history. And I know that's a lot to say, but name something better. Name something better that has a better academic program, a better strength training, sports performance model. We were doing things so far. We had our own. This sounds silly. We had our own physical therapist just for football for everyone else. We had our own sports psychologist, and that was like, do we have the budget? Do we do this? And I was like, I don't care. We're going to do this. And
yeah,
Gene Smith was great about it. So Ryan Day is an excellent coach, but I also think he gets a credit, but also that great state of Ohio supports him. Uh, Ohio State is different. I've been around this country a few times, and there's great places out there. I don't think there's anything like that one. Not from A to Z. And that's why when someone says, well, the fan base is really hard on you, they expect this, they expect that. And my comment was, I know, you're damn right they do, because they're also going to give you everything you need to be successful.
Yeah. I mean, by the way, you haven't been on the Tim May show since you were named to the College Football Hall of Fame, and congratulations in all kinds of ways. But I'm gonna ask you that before I ask you the last couple of questions. What what does that feel like, Urban, to know that you already knew you left your mark, I think, with 3 national championships, but to know that other people will see you in some form or fashion in the College Football Hall of Fame, you know, through eternity or whatever, or until the United States falls, which I don't think is coming anytime soon. You understand what I'm saying? What does that mean to you to have a legacy like that?
Well, college football has been my life, and even well before, I was one of those guys that I knew at a young age I wanted to play as long as I could, and then I started studying. Tom Osborne was the first guy, and how his sports performance model was so far advanced of anyone else. And I'm talking about young, 8, 9 years old. I was studying, and I was the first guy in my area that would lift weights. Like, I would get all the Nebraska workouts, and I bought like a $20 weight set.
Yeah.
So I just always knew that I wanted to coach, and I studied Joe Paterno, Bobby Bowden, Bo Schembecker, Woody Hayes, and I would just read them and read about them and study them. And so when it comes full circle and I got that phone call, there was a reflective moment on that. And then also, arguably, the best players in the recent history, you could say Coach Saban, myself, and, someday Ryan Day maybe, but I had a run there of the greatest players, and there's many of them still playing the NFL. And then you look at the coaching tree, I think the most undervalued people in any program, maybe not now because they're getting paid like they should, but the assistant coaches, when you lose, I think this was on the podcast, the triple option, but
Yeah.
when you lose an assistant coach, Tim,
Yeah.
a great one, that deflates you. Yeah. Because now the head coach has got to pick up that slack, and it's exhausting.
Yeah, I was going to say, I remember doing this story about you and Nick Saban meeting in the Sugar Bowl. The 2014 first college football playoff semifinal, and quoting your wife Shelley, I was asking her about it, and she goes, even before that game, she was already worried because you were losing Tom Herman. Tom Herman had gotten the job at Houston and been part and parcel to this rise at Ohio State, and because replacing great assistants is really tough, right? I mean, because it's a little bit, you still feel like you're jumping off the edge of a cliff a little bit with anybody you hire, right? Are they going to fit? Are they going to be the right guy? And obviously Ryan's dealing with that right now. I mean, what is the angst for a coach in that regard?
Not only losing, but they change. I remember I talked to Joe Madden when they won the 2016 World Series with the Cubs, and I went to see him in Chicago the next year, and he's miserable. And I think they're in first place. And he said it's just everybody changes, and that's God made us. We're selfish people. Where all of a sudden this player that was this humble great kid, and all of a sudden becomes a nut job because of all the. That's no different than a coach, a head coach.
Yeah.
It happens. And so when there's nothing like the feeling of an aligned staff and team, there's nothing like it. And there's nothing worse than a staff and a team that's not aligned. And, maybe that was a gift that I had. I could see that from a mile away. Just the mannerisms, the work ethic, I would always do this, the foxhole mentality. Once that breaks, that is so hard. And Ryan's, he's got a challenge. He's got 2 new coordinators. He's, a transition of quarterback, but it's also the infrastructure is so strong. But to answer your question, it's exhausting, and you can't miss.
When you finally got to the top of the mountain, I call it like winning a national championship, whether you do it earlier or middle or late in your career. It's kind of like getting to the top of Mount Everest a little bit, and like you talked about a while ago, more people succumb coming down Everest than they do going up it. If you understand my drift and stuff. Sure. And like Coach Saban has said, and like you've said, I mean, it's tough to get up there and then stay there, right? I mean, that's the pressure you feel more than anything else, right? I mean, you touched on it a minute ago.
Yeah, Billy Donovan was my neighbor at Florida, and I remember the two of us. We kind of both went through a similar
Yeah.
and I shouldn't say let down, but one of those feelings like imagine you're in that street fight in a heavyweight fight, and you're just getting your face kicked in. You're going, and they lift your arm and said you won, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait, that's it?
Yeah.
Wait, I mean, what else is now next? And then it's do it again. And I'll give you one other analogy is that I was really involved in the Nike group for many, many years. And I remember we go to meetings every year. And I want to say Nike hit the number one. They've ever had $29 billion of sales or something. I'm throwing a number. I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
And as we leave the meeting room, everyone's, and I look around at the higher ups and they're like, they had that look that I had. And you know what that means? Next year, they got to get 31 billion.
Yeah.
So it's one of these. Now, okay, Ryan, or coach or Nike, go do it again. Only do a little bit better this time. So that's the beauty of being at a place like Ohio State, Florida, Alabama. I mean, and as I shared many times, there's a lot of places you can go coach and play that it's just not that important.
Yeah. Yeah.
Scarlet and Gray is not one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, last two things real quick. Did you feel what is the sense you had that you felt for Ryan? And it does come down to you because you've been in those shoes. You know what I mean? That's reason I'm asking you, not about the team necessarily, but after the Michigan game, there was nobody going to be hired from Ohio State as a coordinator somewhere. There was, Ryan, you know about what was going on off the field with him and stuff. The threats his family got, all this kind of stuff. Uh, what is the sense when you're in the what was that moment for you from a despair standpoint that you crawled out of? I guess, for one of another term, because the only people who've ever been there are guys like you and Ryan, who've actually been in that chair in those shoes, and people doubting you left and right and stuff. And what is it? Is it a lonely feeling, or is it a feeling of, hey, let's muster the troops in whatever form or fashion? Because clearly he mustered the troops. You know what I mean? With that meeting he had, you had moments like that in your career, I'm sure, where am I doing the right thing, or is go ahead. I mean, you understand what I'm asking you.
Sure. The one thing about being a coach at Ohio State or Florida, even Utah and Bowling Green, is every decision, everything is in the eye of the world. I have so many friends that are, CEOs and very successful people, but no one knows. They do what they do and they live their life, and it's the profession we chose. So, but I think a lot of mine was self-induced where, we're 13-1 and I've lost my mind, I'm going to try to keep an eye on Ryan about that and Coach Day, and just, he's a friend. He's a guy that I hired. And I know it's coming. He's also pretty grounded, but, I know how hard it was. I talked to him after a couple of those losses, and I saw his face. I just texted with him after the last one. No, we talked, and it was, a powerful conversation, and the ability to regroup. That's, you got to really credit Nina. You got to credit his children, because when you get to that point, Shelly's pulled me out of some really tough times. I mean, pulled me right out of it. My three kids, and I just can't imagine going through that without, Shelly, Nikki, Nate, and Gigi. Boom, let's go. We're good. Let's rally the troops, because, friends are friends, but family's family. So I think surrounding yourself with faith, family, and friends is the three things that I also will pull you through those, and when you think about, it's almost silly that we're having this conversation in it with all the perils, with all the people going through like real stuff.
Yeah.
And you lose a damn game.
Yeah.
But I get it. That's to say that's not real. It is real.
Yeah. Hey, last thing. I've said many times since this run, but the best run I've ever seen a coach, best coaching job I've ever seen a coach do was Ryan from December 1st through January 20th, because man, back against the wall, whatever you want, whatever cliche you want to use, uh, uh, 4 straight games of that magnitude, right? Right, Urban. I mean, playoff games, and number 3 team in the SEC, and then a team that beats you in the regular season, and then Texas. You and I both agree one of the most, maybe the most talented roster in the country, or one of them, and stuff. And then, of course, to top it off, I mean, where does that rank with you? Because if I had to have a number 2 on that list, it would be you guys in 2014. You got to prove that you belong in the first 14 college football playoff first, with a backup 3rd-string quarterback, and then get it done. So that's right there in really the same ilk. It just didn't last as long. Yeah. But where would you put that run, man, by Ryan and this team? It's hard to top, isn't it?
Well, it's the new 12-team playoffs, so you got that
Yeah.
extra game. The the interest level was off the charts. First of all, I think the whole 12-team playoff, I wish that was around years ago. I mean, it was awesome.
Yeah.
But that's as good as I've ever seen. I agree that 14 with Cardell Jones and Wisconsin, Alabama, Oregon.
Yeah.
With but I agree. I think for after the season finale, and to muster that up, and I was in the stadium for Big Ten Network, the Tennessee, and once again now, I mean, you got to give Buckeye, the Buckeye Nation's got to criticize them all you want, rip them apart and say they're whatever names you call them. I was there.
Yeah.
What other places like that after a lawsuit where you get your face kicked in? I don't know. I just think it's a very unique place. You put it all together, there's no place like it. And there's so many people. Number 1, the players. Number 2, the staff. But number 3, that Buckeye Nation. Yeah. To be there on that night at Tennessee, I mean, that was full of energy, and that doesn't happen many places.
Urban Meyer, one of the greats in college football history, now in the College Football Hall of Fame, and I enjoyed covering you during those years, and I appreciate you, man, joining the Tim May Show again, my man.
Love you, brother. Take care, Tim.